Hi guys, so glad you're here. Welcome back to CRYPTID'S Den. Come on in, get cozy, and let's settle in for a good time. I hope today's been gentle with you. Tell me where you're watching from, and how you've been. I really do care. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. This space feels more like home with you in it. Now, let's get into it. I was 5 when they found me, soaked, shaking, and alone in the woods of Ridge Hollow. A black boy with no name, no past, and no reason to still be breathing that cold October night. The Whitmores. A white farming family took me in, gave me warmth and something close to safe. But even in that love, I lived like a shadow, watching, listening, never quite belonging. That's how I heard it. Faint and broken, coming from the old barn no one used anymore. I followed the sound and found, not a monster, but something broken too. Massive, hair matted, breathing heavy. But it didn't growl. It didn't attack. Its eyes looked like mine, tired, hunted, still hoping. I should have run. But instead I left my scarf. That moment changed everything. We started to speak, without words. Sticks, stones, branches, and dirt. We taught each other. Trusted each other. And I learned that it wasn't just hiding. It had escaped. Others like it were still out there. Caged, hunted, silenced. The world doesn't forgive what it doesn't understand. Clyde, the old hunter next door, started watching us. My family had to choose. Protect the creature, or protect themselves. Then, one stormy night, it vanished. Left behind a single white ghost pipe flower. Something that only grows on dying roots. A quiet thank you. 20 years later, I brought my daughter back to Ridge Hollow. And the signs returned. Stones stacked just right. Sticks bent into symbols. A tall shadow at the edge of the woods, just watching at dusk. I never saw it again, but I know it never forgot. And I've never stopped remembering. I was 10 when they found me. Face down in a ditch off County Road 6, bones shaking. Shirt soaked through with things I don't want to name. Cold air sticking to my skin like a second death. A trash bag had wrapped around my ankle somehow, like even the wind didn't want me. I don't remember who screamed first. Just remember the door slammed from an old Chevy, the way boots thundered on gravel and hands, real ones, pulling me up from whatever hole I'd been left in. That was 5 years ago. My name's Malik, and I'm the black kid the Whitmores picked up like a ghost off the shoulder of the road. They didn't say it like that, of course. Folks around here said, rescued. Said saved, but being chosen and being claimed, they're not the same thing. The Whitmores live out past Ridge Hollow, near a long-faded barn and a windmill that won't spin. White folks, quiet folks, kind in the way that doesn't always know how to be soft. But they took me in, gave me a bed, a name on the mailbox, a school folder that said Malik Whitmore in red ink like it belonged. Still, I never stopped feeling like something taped on. Nana keeps a shelf of canned peaches and gospel tapes. Caleb, my oldest brother, drives the tractor and calls me City Soft, even though I've never seen a city in my life. And Will, my father, talks with his hands more than his mouth. I think I scared them at first, like maybe I was a stray dog too close to the door. And if they loved me too much, I'd run or bite. So I made myself quiet, learned to listen instead of speak, learned the patterns of wind and the way crows warn each other long before we notice the storm. That's why I started going into the woods. There's a hush in the trees I never found anywhere else. Like they don't care who you were, only that you were still breathing. Every fall, the woods get this kind of gold gray. You can smell the cold coming through the leaves. I used to take a stick and trace stories in the dirt. Dragons, wolves, stars. Nothing ever answered back. Until that Thursday. I remember it because Mama had left out a new flannel shirt for me on the clothesline. and Caleb made fun of me for being cold-blooded like a lizard. I skipped shores, wandered off past the creek, past the fence no one fixes anymore, and into that hollow where the ground always dips soft under your boots. There was an old toolshed back there, half collapsed. Smells like rotten metal. Nobody goes near it since a fox died in it one summer, and Caleb dared me to touch the bones. That day, I heard something inside. Not a rustle, not wind, not raccoons or deer hooves. It was heavier, low, like someone breathing with a throat full of broken glass. I crept closer. The wood slats had holes big enough to see through if you crouched, so I did. And my heart stopped. I mean it, not because it was bleeding, though it was, but because it looked like something that shouldn't be. Hair matted gray and brown, stuck to the floor like it had been dragged there. One leg twisted at a wrong angle. Dried blood streaked like rust. Its chest rose slow, and fell like it didn't want to anymore. One arm was bent beneath it. The other was near its face. And its eyes, one of them opened, barely, just enough. It saw me, I know it did, but it didn't growl, didn't move, just breathed, loud and thick, like the air hurt to swallow. I don't know why I didn't run. I think maybe I saw myself in it. The way something can be broken and still trying not to die. I had this old wool scarf Mama knitted, even though she didn't really know how. It was itchy and too short, but I wore it every fall like a promise. Without thinking, I pulled it from my neck, reached through the gap, and laid it near its arm. Then I ran. I didn't even look back, not until I was halfway up the ridge. And when I did, it had moved. Not much. Just its arm. Just enough to drag the scarf closer to its chest. Not like a bear. Not like an animal at all. Like a person trying not to feel cold anymore. Something caught in my throat. Something old and sharp. I stood there frozen, heart banging so loud I thought it might hear me again. And then I whispered, "You don't have to die alone," not sure if it was for me or for it. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep either. I lay awake and stared at the ceiling fan, counting every turn like it meant something. My fingers kept twitching, like the scarf was still in my hand, but it wasn't. It was out there. With him. I didn't even know what to call it. Not a monster. Not a myth. Just something breathing in a place where breathing ain't always guaranteed. And something about that made it mine. Not in the way you own a pet, but in the way you remember someone who once knelt beside you and the whole world kept walking. That was the first time I realized the woods were watching me back. And I had a choice to make, but I didn't know yet that the choice wouldn't just be mine. It never is out here. Not when the thing you've found isn't just a creature. It's a story you've been waiting your whole life to finish, or to finally begin. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I kept hearing the sound it made. Thick, rattled breathing like lungs dragging chains behind them. I thought maybe it was just a dream stitched together from stories I'd heard. But the mud still stained my shoes, and my scarf was gone. By morning, the weight in my chest had hardened into something real. I tried to tell them over breakfast, voice low, careful. Every word like walking barefoot through broken glass. Darlene was making eggs. Caleb was dunking his toast in jelly like always. We'll read the paper like it owed him money. I said it soft, like maybe if I said it small enough it wouldn't scare the world apart. There's something hurt in the shed. I think it needs help. Darlene turned from the stove first. Her eyes didn't blink, just froze, wide and sharp. Caleb laughed. "You mean a coyote or something?" "Dang thing, probably rabbit." I shook my head. It's not a dog. Not a bear either. Then what the hell is it? He said, smirking like I was telling ghost stories again. I don't know. Darlene dropped the spatula. It clattered too loud. She looked at me like she'd just realized I'd brought death inside her house on the bottom of my shoes. You went back there alone? Her voice cracked like a dry branch. You shouldn't be out that far. You know better, Malik. I didn't mean. I started, but she was already wiping her hands, grabbing the landline. I'm calling somebody. The wildlife department, or the sheriff. Don't, I said. Don't, I said. Will didn't look up. He just kept reading. Or pretending to. Caleb stood. If there's something out there, we need to put it down. End of story. My stomach twisted. The room was too small. The air too loud. My mouth moved before my brain caught up. If someone had called the police the day they found me, I'd be dead too. Everything stopped. Even the birds outside. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, with my fists curled at my sides and waited to be sent back into whatever ditch I crawled out of. But the silence broke from an unexpected place. The scratch of a lighter. Henry, my grandfather, was sitting at the end of the table, same spot he always sat, chewing tobacco and mostly ignoring the world. He struck a match, lit his cigarette, and took one long, steady drag. Then he said, "Get your coat. We're going to see it. We'll finally put down the paper." Didn't say a word, just stood and grabbed his flashlight. Darlene didn't stop us. Not then. But her hands trembled the whole time we laced up our boots. The walk to the shed felt longer this time. Like the woods knew what we were doing. Knew we were coming to see something we were meant to find. Inside, the air was cold and thick, with a smell of iron and rot. The shape was still there, bigger in the daylight. Still lying on its side, chest rising slower now. The scarf I'd left was bunched against its ribs, soaked but still there. Will kept his hand near his belt. I don't know if he had a weapon, but the way he stood said he was ready to use one. Henry stepped closer. Slow, measured. Then he knelt. For a long moment, no one said a word. "It's not a bear?" Henry finally murmured. "What the hell is it then?" Will asked, barely above a whisper. Henry didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on its arms. One of them had deep ridges burned into the fur, lines that circled the wrist, the forearm. Rope burns, chain marks. He pointed to the leg, swollen, black and purple, like something had twisted it hard and left it to fester. "This thing's been tied down, maybe caged." "You've seen this before," I said quietly. He glanced at me, then looked back at the creature. "Not this one, but yeah. Our families crossed paths before." Will shook his head. "This isn't our burden. We don't need to bring something like this into our lives." "Too late," Henry said. "It's already here." I stepped forward, heart banging like a hammer in my throat. That's when it moved. Not much. Just the hand. It lifted slow, heavy, like it took every ounce of strength left. Then its finger, long, thick, clawed, dragged through the dust on the wooden floor. I thought maybe it was dying, that it was just twitching. But no, it was drawing. A shape formed, not random, intentional. A spiral, but not just one. Two, twisted into each other like knots, like infinity loops nesting inside themselves. "What is that?" Will muttered. I didn't answer. I knelt. My hand hovered, unsure. Then I pressed my palm into the center of the symbol. The wood felt warmer than it should have. My chest ached like something ancient had been pulled into me. Like the loneliness I carried all these years had found its mirror in something not human, but still real. Still hurting. For the first time since the day they found me bleeding on the road, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel alone. And I think, somehow, it didn't either. Henry stood again. "We don't speak its language," he said softly. "But that don't mean we can't listen." Will exhaled hard. "This stays between us." I nodded. We didn't have to agree. The decision had already been made. Right there in the dirt. Something broken had reached out, and we'd reached back. But deep in the trees, behind the silence, I swear I felt something shift. Like the woods had just watched us make a promise, and they weren't sure we could keep it. We argued for hours. I don't remember who shouted first, but the voices in that house cracked the walls like frost splitting old paint. Darlene was pacing, arms crossed so tight her knuckles turned white. Caleb slammed the door hard enough that dust fell from the kitchen lights, and I stood in the middle of it all, heart jackhammering against my ribs, knowing I'd lit the match that set the whole thing off. "It's dangerous," Darlene said for the third time, voice sharp and shaking. "You don't know what it is. You don't know what it is capable of." "It was chained," I said. "Somebody did that to it, like it was property, like it wasn't alive." Caleb rolled his eyes, pacing like a caged dog. "You saw its size. What happens when it's not hurt anymore? What if it comes for us next?" "It didn't," I said. "It had every chance to." He scoffed, running a hand through his hair. "You're a kid. You think it's some Disney story. That thing could tear the roof off this house if it wanted to. But it didn't." Will hadn't said much yet. Just sat in his chair like the weight of it all was pressing down on his shoulders. Henry was in the corner, smoking slow, watching the fire like it might decide for us. Darlene looked straight at me, her voice lowering. "What if it's sick? What if it brings something in? What if it's not alone? I couldn't take it anymore." My chest felt like it was splitting open. "Then why didn't you leave me out there?" That stopped everything. The words came before I could take them back. Too raw. Too loud. I swallowed, blinked fast. "You found me in the dirt, bleeding. You didn't know what I was going to become. You didn't wait for a test result. You didn't ask if I was dangerous. You just helped." Darlene didn't speak. I looked at Will. If someone had called the cops when they saw me on the road, I wouldn't be here. I'd be a number in a file, a name on a stone. Silence sat down with us after that. Heavy, breathless. Then Henry stood. "We help it," he said simply, "but just once. If it turns on us, we put it down clean." Caleb opened his mouth, but Henry cut him off. "You don't have to like it. You just have to shut up long enough to listen." Will rubbed his face like trying to wake himself from a nightmare. "This is going to go sideways. Fast." Darlene left the room. Her footsteps echoed like thunder up the stairs. That night I didn't sleep, but I stayed by the window, watching the shed, watching the dark. The air felt different, not just colder, thicker. Like something old and watching had pulled closer to the house. By morning, nothing had changed, but something had. I went out early, boots crunching frost. No one followed. The trees were still. Even the wind didn't speak. I opened the shed door slowly. It was still there, alive. Breathing slower, but breathing. I set down some water, a blanket, my flashlight. It didn't move. Its eyes were shut, but I saw one flicker when I adjusted the edge of the blanket. Then I turned and left, heart pounding like it might burst from my chest. At lunch, no one said a word. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. That night, I woke to a sound I didn't expect. The front door creaked open, then shut again. Soft. I slipped from bed, feet cold on the wood floor. Through the window, I saw her, Darlene, wrapped in her old brown coat, moving slow across the yard like she was afraid the night might break beneath her. She was holding something. A thick, folded quilt. The kind she only pulled out in winter, hand-stitched, old, the corners worn thin from years of use. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the shed. I watched her open the door. She didn't stay long, didn't try to speak, just laid the blanket near the creature's side, not too close, but not far either. Then she turned and walked away. When she came back inside, she didn't look up at me watching her. She just locked the door, hung up her coat, and stood in the kitchen for a long time. I didn't say anything. I just stood in the shadows, my heart too full to hold. Not for the creature, not even for myself, but for her. For the woman who once looked at me like I was a broken thing someone left behind, and who now, slowly, carefully, was learning how to heal not just me, but herself too. The next morning, the quilt was still there. So was the creature, but something in the air had shifted, but the faintest thread of understanding, and sometimes that's enough to begin again. The mornings changed first. The frost was still there, clinging to the porch rails and kissing the grass in silver. But now, before the sun had fully yawned over the ridge, I'd wake up with one thought circling my head like smoke. He's still out there. Not even the creature. Not even the thing. I don't know when the shift happened. Maybe it was the quilt. Maybe it was the way his breathing steadied. Less like he was drowning and more like he was choosing to stay alive. But every morning after that, I'd sneak out the side door with whatever scraps I could find. Bread heels, soft apples, sometimes leftovers Darlene wouldn't miss. And walk across the yard like the earth might give way beneath my boots. He'd be waiting, never close to the door, always in shadow, but never gone. At first, he didn't touch the food until I left. I'd place it gently by the entrance, back away slowly, never turning my back. But over time, I noticed the crumbs disappear quicker, the apple cores left in neat halves, the meat shredded but not scattered. And one morning, there was something waiting for me. A stone, round, smooth, gray-blue like creek water, sitting on the threshold right where I'd left the bread the day before. I picked it up like it might burn. It was warm, not from sunlight. It was still early, but from being held. Something in my chest went quiet, like a chord finally landing on the right note. The next day, I brought him fresh cornbread. Still warm, wrapped in a napkin. When I came back the following morning, a new gift was waiting. A long black feather, twisted at the end like someone had braided it. I'd never seen anything like it. Too big for a crow, too clean for a turkey. It looked, placed, chosen. The exchange became ritual. Bread for stone, cornmeal for ghost pipe. One day I left half an orange. That night I found a stick figure made of twine and moss tucked behind the shed hinge. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was something older in the silence. Something that didn't ask for language. But one afternoon, I stayed too long. The sun had dropped low, slicing gold through the slats in the shed wall. I'd been drawing again. Little pictures in the dirt with a stick. Trees, birds, a house. I didn't mean to fall asleep. When I woke, my cheek was pressed to the earth, and the sky outside had gone soft blue, close to dusk. My whole body stiffened. My mouth went dry, because I wasn't alone. He was awake. Sitting up. Not standing, but not down anymore. He hadn't moved toward me, but he was near. Closer than I'd ever seen him, close enough to see the dry blood matted into the fur of his shoulder. They healed over welt across his ribs. The way his hands, huge, gnarled, more human than they had any right to be, rested in his lap like he was meditating. He didn't blink. I didn't scream. We just stared at each other. Then, slow, he turned his gaze to the ground. With one finger, he drew something. Not a spiral this time. A tree. A crude shape, but clear enough. Branches, roots, a trunk. I sat up, heart loud in my ears, and copied him. Same shape, same roots. When I finished, he made another mark. A swirl beside the tree. Then another. Spirals layered over each other, repeating. That night I took a stick and carved the same shapes into my notebook. I didn't know what they meant yet, but I felt them. Deep, like thunder under skin. The next morning I brought him honey bread wrapped in wax paper. He took it without hesitation. He was stronger now. Still favoring one leg, but he could reach out with both arms. When he finished eating, he turned to the back wall of the shed and stood. The motion was slow, careful, but certain. Then, with a claw of one long finger, he began scratching into the wood. Lines, marks, symbols, deep enough to gouge. I moved closer. It wasn't random. It was a map. Rough, but deliberate. Twisted trees, a river bend, rock formations that matched places I'd seen when hiking with Caleb. And then circles, 2 of them. One with jagged lines around it like barbed wire, the other with a skull shape carved into its center. I froze. I knew what this was. A warning. Or a memory, or both. He stepped back, chest heaving from the effort, and looked at me. There was something in his face, buried under fur and fatigue. Not fear. Not even pain. Grief. I looked at the skull on the map, then at the man-beast standing beside it. You're not the only one, are you? My voice came out hoarse. He didn't nod. Not exactly. But his eyes dropped, and that said enough. There were more, and some of them weren't free. That night, I sat on the porch staring out at the tree line, clutching a round stone he'd left me. This one etched faintly with a spiral. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I just knew something was pulling us forward. Not out of danger, but into something we could no longer pretend wasn't real. His silence had weight. Not the kind you ignore. The kind that bends air and fills corners. By the end of that week, I started to realize he wasn't just healing. He was remembering. Every time I came to the shed, he was stronger. Not fully standing, but moving more. Eyes sharper, watching me closer, tracking my steps, like he knew what time it was by the sound of my boots in the frost. Some days, Henry came with me, never spoke much. Just handed me a mason jar of boiled roots or a cloth soaked in honey and pine salve, stuff that worked better than medicine from town. Stuff that smelled like war stories. He never asked what I planned to do with it. Just nodded and walked back. Cigarette glowing in the early mist. I'd kneel beside the creature. By now, I'd stopped calling him anything else, and gently cleaned the cracked skin around his ankle. The chain marks were deep, almost infected, and sometimes he flinched. Not like an animal, though. Not like pain surprised him. More like he was bracing for it. Like he expected it. There was a kind of shame in his eyes. It hurt to see that. I'd press warm cloths against the swelling, lay leaves across open wounds, whisper stupid little things like almost done. Hang in there. It's okay now. He never responded. But one day, he did something I didn't expect. He reached for the dirt beside him and drew again. A line. Another. Then a tree. Then a curve. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. Another map. But this time, more detailed. Sharper. Not just lines and rivers. Symbols. He pointed to one shape. A circle with jagged edges. Then looked at me. Pointed again. I knew what he meant. That place, it still existed. Someone else was still there. I felt it like a cold knot under my ribs. I pressed my finger into the dirt next to his. Can we help them? His head tilted, breathing slowed. He didn't nod, but he didn't look away either. I took that as a yes. Later that night, I asked Henry what he thought the symbols meant. We were sitting out by the woodshed, fire popping between us. He leaned forward, face lit orange by the flame. I saw marks like those once. Long time ago, not here. Laos, 68. We were chasing ghosts through rice fields, and one night we came across a village where no one spoke our tongue. Not even close. But there were these carvings. Same spiral shapes. Same trees with roots wrapped around skulls. I sat still. What happened? He took a long drag. Let the smoke out slow. We left. Command said not to touch it. But I remember the feeling, like something old had looked up out of the dirt and decided not to stand yet. Then he passed me a folded rag. Inside was a pouch. Heavy, for the fever, he said. When the wounds go bad, I nodded. Be careful what stories you open, he added. The next morning, I brought the fever poultice to the creature. He took it, held it in his palm, then closed his hand around it with something like reverence. Later that day, when I came back to check the water bowl, I saw something sitting right on top. A stone again, but this one was different, wrapped in cloth, old cloth, and stitched on the edge, barely legible. Were the letters Sheriff's Dept, Caldwell Company. I froze, unwrapped it slowly. Inside was the stone, smooth and dark. But the cloth, it was a piece of a uniform. Frayed, torn, blood still faintly staining the seams. I stared at it until my throat went dry. He had taken it from someone. Or someone had left it behind. And now he'd given it to me. Not as a threat, as a message, as a memory. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house felt louder. Every shadow by the window looked like something watching. And yet, deep down, I didn't feel fear. I felt grief. He'd been chained, beaten, watched others like him dragged off, silenced. And somewhere out there, past the rivers and trees and old fences, someone else was still bound. Not every wound bleeds. Some just stay open. The thing about secrets is, they rot louder than you think. You hide something long enough, it doesn't go quiet. It hums, just under the floorboards, behind the shed walls, in the rustle of leaves that stop when you do. I should have known someone would hear it. Clyde Delaney lived half a mile down the gravel road from us. Retired Army, or so he claimed, though no one ever saw his discharge papers. He had one good eye, 3 trail cams, and a nose for other people's business. You could tell by the way he wore his belt like a badge and called his German Shepherd Major. Clyde didn't believe in coincidence, and Clyde sure as hell didn't believe in keeping out of things that didn't belong to him. It started with the dogs barking. Not ours, Clyde's, 3 nights in a row, just after dark, sharp, sudden, not the casual I smell a raccoon kind of bark. This was full-throated, lung-ripping. The kind that pulled you out of bed whether you wanted it to or not. Henry knew. I saw it in his eyes every time the howling started. He'd stop what he was doing, turn him toward the back of the house, jaw clenched, thumb twitching toward his cigarette pouch like it could hold off whatever was coming next. It came to a head the 4th night. The moon was just a sliver over the ridge. I'd snuck out again, hands full of jerky and a folded towel for a fresh compress. The shed was darker than usual. The shadows inside somehow heavier. He was sitting up now, alert but still, like a guard dog waiting for a command that never came. I didn't speak, just knelt, unwrapped the towel, set down the food. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he looked past me. I turned, and through the slats in the wood, I saw a flashlight beam dancing along the tree line. Too far to see a face, but not too far to feel watched, I whispered. Someone's out there. He didn't move, didn't blink. I backed away slow, didn't run, just eased out and closed the door behind me like I was tucking in a child who pretended not to be scared of the dark. The next morning, the sheriff's cruiser pulled into our driveway. Darlene was on the porch with her coffee. Caleb was chopping wood, shirt off like he always did when he wanted to remind the world he was tough. Will came out drying his hands, trying not to look nervous. The deputy did smile. Got a call, he said. Neighbor said he saw a large animal on your property. Bigger than a bear, maybe upright. Any of y'all see something? I held my breath. Will cleared his throat. We've had raccoons in the bins. Coyotes, maybe. The deputy nodded, like he'd heard it all before. Clyde's got tracks on his trail cam. Says they're barefoot. Human-shaped. Heavy. "You sure there's nothing out there? Maybe someone hiking off trail," Will offered. "Middle of the night?" Will offered, the deputy asked. Will didn't answer. They left after 20 minutes. No warrant, no search. But the silence that followed was worse than any knock. Will slammed the back door behind him. "It's over. Whatever this is, it ends tonight." Darlene didn't argue. Caleb didn't either. But I saw his eyes follow me as I walked away from the table. That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced, counted footsteps between the porch and the barn, kept replaying the flashlight in the woods, the sheriff's boots on our gravel, the way the creature hadn't flinched even when danger came close. I waited until the house was quiet, then slipped outside. But when I reached the shed, the door was open. At first, I panicked. But then I saw him still inside, kneeling, breathing deep. The kind of breath you take before a long run. And beside him, Caleb, holding a piece of chalk, drawing lines in the dirt, a rough sketch of the woods, the creek, the back road. He turned when he saw me. "Mama and Dad think he's gotta go," he said. "Clyde's gonna bring people, maybe worse. So if he's gonna run, he needs a plan." I stood there stunned. "You're helping him." Caleb shrugged. "I don't like him. Don't trust him. But I don't kill things just 'cause they scare me." He looked back at the creature. "He's been helping you. I see that now. He could have crushed you by now. Crushed all of us. But he didn't." He pointed to the spiral etched into the shed wall. "I don't know what that means, but I've seen the way you look at it. Like it matters. So yeah, I'm helping. Just don't tell them yet." I nodded. There was a lump in my throat I didn't know how to swallow. Caleb stood, wiped his hands on his jeans. "You know," he said, looking me dead in the eye, "you're not blood. Not really. But you're my brother." He paused. "And if you deserved a second chance, then so does he." Then he walked past me, back into the dark, not waiting for thanks. I sat with the creature for a while after that. No words, just breath, just the sound of the woods, leaning in to listen. And in the dirt between us, a half-drawn path curling towards something neither of us could see yet. But we both knew it was coming. It wasn't the rain that woke me. It was something cold, sharper. A knot in my chest that pulled tight all at once, like a string had been yanked from somewhere deep in the woods. Like something had snapped. I sat up without thinking. The window beside my bed was fogged from breath, but I could see the trees moving in the dark. Not wind, not storm. Movement. I pulled on my boots. No socks. Grabbed my coat, didn't zip it. The screen door creaked like it always did, but no one stirred inside the house. The rain was steady, not wild. Just that kind of soaking drizzle that finds its way down your spine, even under fabric. I headed straight for the shed. It was empty. Not a sound, not a breath, not even a mark in the dirt where I used to sit. My stomach dropped. My skin went hot, then cold. He was gone. And I hadn't said goodbye. I stepped inside, blinking at the darkness, heart hammering so loud I swore the trees could hear it. The blanket we gave him was still there, folded, dry, placed deliberately. And on top of it, my scarf, the same one I'd left for him that very first night. Dry, too. Like it hadn't been touched since the last time it meant something. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I followed the mud. Slippery trails smeared across the grass. Deep, heavy. Slanted to one side like he was still limping. They cut through the yard, past the barn. Toward the ridge where the trees grow thick and the ground turns to moss. The rain made it hard to track, but I knew where he was going, and somehow I knew I was meant to follow. I slipped once. Hands hit mud. Got up bleeding from one palm, didn't care. Branches lashed across my face like punishment, but I kept pushing forward. At the edge of the trees, I saw him, standing, not hiding, not crouching. Standing tall in the clearing, arms at his sides, body straight like stone carved from shadow. He was facing the tree line, facing something I couldn't see. I slowed. Didn't call his name. Didn't even breathe too loud. I stepped into the clearing, mud squelching underfoot, and only then did he turn. Not fully. Just enough. Enough to see me. And in that moment, I saw everything. His shoulders carried weight like a man who'd buried others. His chest rose slow, steady. His fur, wet and matted, hung like a curtain over old wounds. And in one hand, he held something. A flower. White. Ghost pipe. Fragile as breath. He took one step toward me, then another. No growl, no warning, just presence. And when he reached me, he didn't speak, didn't touch me. He knelt, placed the flower at my feet, and looked up, eyes glassy, blinking against the rain. Not fear, not pain, just something like goodbye. I crouched beside him, knees soaking through, rain dripping down my collar. I wanted to say something, anything, but the lump in my throat wouldn't move, so I reached out, and he reached back. Our hands didn't touch, but they hovered there, close enough. Then he stood again, turned, and pointed to a tree just beyond the clearing, a tall one. Bark pale from age, half-rotted, a scar across its base, clean, deep, like someone had struck it long ago and walked away. And above that scar, a carving, a spiral, the same one had drawn a dozen times, but this one older, faded, weathered, etched high up where no man's arm could reach, and below it, scratched into the bark, barely legible under lichen and moss. One word. Run. He didn't explain, didn't need to. Whatever was coming, he couldn't stop it, and neither could I. He stepped back into the trees, quiet as breath, disappeared. And I just stood there, mud on my knees, flower in my hand, and my heart thudding like maybe it wanted to run too, but didn't know which direction was safe. The rain kept falling. I whispered, mostly to myself, next time, I'll find you first. But even as I said it, I knew there might not be a next time, because the woods never forget what they keep, and some goodbyes are just pauses dressed as endings. Ridge Hollow hadn't changed much. The road in was still cracked in the same places. The trees still leaned in toward each other like they had secrets only the pines could understand. And the Whitmore house, our house, looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown too much to fit inside it the same way. It had been 20 years. I came back with Lila in the back seat, asleep with her cheek against the window, a blanket wrapped around her knees, even though the car was warm. She was 6, and had more questions in her than I had answers. But not that morning. That morning, she was quiet. The kind of quiet kids get when something older than them brushes past without touching. She hadn't asked why we were here. Not exactly. Just whispered, "Will he know me?" And I didn't answer, because I didn't know who he was anymore. If he still was. We stayed the week. The farmhouse was still sturdy, though it creaked more than it used to. Darlene had passed 5 years earlier. Cancer. We followed a year later. Caleb ran a roofing crew out in Fayetteville now. Said I could take whatever I needed from the land before they sold it. But I wasn't here for that. I was here for him. Or for what might still be left. On the second morning, Lila came to me with something cupped in her palm. "Daddy," she whispered, "I found this on the windowsill." It was a stone, round, polished smooth, and carved on its underside, the spiral, clean, fresh, like it had only been etched the night before. I stared at it so long she thought I'd gone somewhere else. Then she leaned in close. "Do people in these woods still leave gifts?" I nodded. Sometimes. I didn't tell her who used to do that. I didn't need to. She just knew. And from that morning on, She started checking the windows before breakfast. She found more. A single pine needle tied into a braid, a lopsided feather tucked beneath the porch rail, a ring of moss shaped like a circle, not placed randomly, but nested in a perfect coil. I wanted to believe it was the wind, but wind doesn't remember what you used to call home. One afternoon, we walked up the ridge behind the barn. The trail was still there. Fainter, but still there. I carried the old notebook in my back pocket. The one with the symbols, the maps. The flower he gave me pressed between two yellowed pages. Lila skipped ahead, her curls bouncing in the sun, and I let her. Because some things don't need protection anymore. Some things just need witness. When we reached the clearing, she stopped. Right in front of the tree, the one with the spiral. It had grown darker with age, split in places from storms. But the mark was still there, faint, but real. She turned to me and asked, "Is this where it happened?" I couldn't speak, so I just nodded. And in that silence, she did something that knocked the air out of my chest. She knelt and placed a stone at the base of the tree, then stepped back, hands folded, watching like something was going to answer her. And maybe it did, because later that evening, when the sun was folding itself into gold and the air started to hum with cicadas, she disappeared. Just for a moment. One blink. She'd been playing by the porch, drawing in the dust with a stick. Then she wasn't there. I panicked, called her name so loud it hurt, ran toward the woods, heart thundering, throat dry. I reached the fence line in under 30 seconds, and there she was, walking out, calm, like nothing had happened. Her cheeks were pink, her shoes muddy, and in her hand, a flower, white. Ghost pipe. My knees buckled before I realized I was holding her. She looked up at me and said, He's kind. He didn't say anything, but he held my hand, and he pointed me back. I couldn't speak. I just held her, pressed my lips to her hair, breathed in everything I'd ever tried to forget. That night after she fell asleep, I sat on the porch alone. The sky was split wide open with stars. The woods whispered like they used to, like they remembered my footsteps. And I went back, one last time, to the tree. I traced the spiral with my fingertips, felt the groove, then the wood, then something deeper. Something older than language. And I whispered, "There are some debts we're never meant to repay." My voice cracked. We just carry them forward. I reached into my pocket, took out the stone she'd found, and left it there, beneath the roots. No note, no prayer, just memory. And that was enough. When I turned to go, I didn't look back, because I didn't need to. Some stories don't end. They just leave a trail for the next one to follow. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with echoes, quiet things. A breath left behind in the trees. A mark on the earth that doesn't ask to be understood. Only not forgotten. This was never about monsters. Not real. It was about the space between fear and mercy. About the moment when instinct says, run, but the heart says, stay. And in that split second, who we choose to be, we've all known what it's like to be misunderstood. To be seen as something we're not. Some of us have walked through life carrying chains that no one else can see. And some have dared to lay down those chains, even knowing they might be picked up again tomorrow. That takes courage. A different kind. There's a kind of grace in choosing to see beyond the surface, in offering shelter before asking questions, in letting silence speak instead of trying to fill it. Sometimes, healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. It shows up in quiet offerings, stones on a windowsill, flowers left in the rain, small acts of kindness that say, I see you. I don't need you to prove anything. I just want you to breathe. And sometimes, It's not the ones with power who change everything. It's the ones who still choose compassion, even after they've been hurt. The ones who stay soft when the world keeps trying to harden them. The ones who carry pain, but carry it with purpose. The forest never forgets. Neither does time. But the gift we carry as human beings is that we can choose what we remember. We can choose what we pass down, not just fear, not just survival, but understanding. Maybe the ones we fear most are the ones waiting longest for someone to listen. So if this story stirred something in you, if it made you feel less alone, or more aware of the quiet people, the unseen kindnesses, the strange beauty in what we don't yet understand, hold on to that. Because sometimes, that's where the truth lives. Thank you for walking through the shadows with us. If this story meant something to you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your reflections matter more than you know. Don't forget to follow the channel and subscribe, so you don't miss the next time the forest speaks. And if you've ever left a gift in silence, or received one when you needed it most,